It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost their supporters like Nick Fuentes. It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. There's no question that Tucker has become the most virulent super spreader of vile ideas in America. And the rest of us who oppose those vile ideas have every right to call him that. Tucker Carlson preys on the friendship he proclaims with others, and then he knifes them directly between the shoulder blades when convenient for him. Tucker Carlson was supposedly Charlie Kirk's friend. Charlie believed that Nick Fuentes was vermin. That's a direct quote.
Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this.
The fact that Nick Fuentes has become so influential in conservative politics that Ben Shapiro had to make a 41-minute video about it. That tells you something about where they're at right now. I think it is so much worse than where we're at. I would so much rather be Democrats right now moving forward. I don't know about you guys, but I am pretty fascinated by what is happening right now. I'm just fascinated with the idea that Nick Fuentes, literally just one guy, has been so disruptive to Republican Party politics over the last month. Longer than that, but it's really reached like a fever pitch in the last month.
Hey folks, I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic.
And this video on Twitter has 52,000 likes, 13,000 retweets, and 27,000 replies. That usually means it is a shit show down here in the replies. Top replies from Candace Owens. I feel on an editorial point, it was completely unnecessary to include me in this anti-Tucker rant. Alas, I shall have to respond. Well, Candace, I think it's because you have become like a Dave Chappelle character, like an actual black Nazi. I think that's why that is.
In depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds.
It's also, I think, important to point out how significant the Charlie Kirk shooting was for Nick Fuentes, because Nick Fuentes responded to that event in an extremely savvy way. I think that was calculated. I think it was deliberate, because after Charlie Kirk died or was killed, Nick Fuentes immediately pounced on that, and his rhetoric was very lionizing of Charlie Kirk. And they, there was a deep animosity between those two people when Charlie Kirk was alive. But what Fuentes did was exploit that kind of martyr status and then express, deep respect for a worthy opponent. And he was able to tap into, I think, a lot of Kirk's followers' anger and rage. And I think that had massive appeal. I don't know what the numbers are. I have no idea. I don't really pay attention to those kinds of things. But if I had to guess, I would say that Fuentes was able to successfully poach a significant chunk of Charlie Kirk's online base of support. I think he played that so well for himself. And that has caused this Nick Fuentes problem to balloon and get worse. It's just gotten so much worse since Kirk was shot. Candace played a huge part too. Candace is more, she's more like, I don't know. Candace is more just like a crazy person. I don't think Candace is very ideological in the same way that Fuentes is. I don't think she's motivated by ideology. I think she's motivated by something else entirely. Psychosis or narcissism or whatever. You literally just called her a black Nazi. I didn't mean maybe I should be more precise. But the language that she's just gone full zog, batshit conspiracy theories. But I don't think she's motivated by a belief system. I think she is motivated by something else.
Blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend. And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition, the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition, the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation, and in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable.
What makes Nick different than Ben in their politics? Because I see Spider-Man meme in my head. They have very different politics. First of all, Nick is like a Nazi, like a literal Nazi. Anti-Semitism is something that is like axiomatic for him. Like a lot of Nick's beliefs and messaging and comes from like a deeply rooted, virulent anti-Semitism. Nick, I don't think, believes in liberal democracy. In fact, I know he doesn't believe in liberal democracy. He praises groups like the Taliban because they keep women in line, and according to him, right? Ban fornication and ban like drug use, and he wants like a Christian theocratic dictatorship. And Ben, as conservative as Ben is, believes in liberal democracy, which I understand there's a lot of contradictions there, because how could you support Donald Trump if you actually believe that? But in Ben's mind, the left represents a greater threat to liberal democracy than Trump does. He believes in the veneer of liberal democracy. I don't know, guys, like in terms of right-wing pundits, Ben Shapiro is honestly pretty fucking moderate, all things considered, compared with like relative to where the movement is at. Ben is definitely closer to the center, which isn't to say that I find his politics to be centrist. That's not what I mean. But I mean relative to the rest of the right-wing movement. I, of course, think his politics are quite extreme.
It is not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints.
Crack Fox, did I get you for the primer? Thank you, buddy.
In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler's supporters like Nick Fuentes. It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Those are all elements of free speech. And anyone who says differently is lying to you, and lying for the most cynical reasons, to misdirect from their own defense of those Nazi apologists and their promoters. The issue here isn't that Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week. He has every right to do that, of course. The issue here is that Tucker Carlson decided to normalize and fluff Nick Fuentes, and that...
Now, Ben is kind of using language that the left was using in 2017. I'd have to go back and look at what Ben was saying back in 2017, but back then there was a lot of conversations about the left saying, like, don't normalize Trump, don't normalize Milo Yiannopoulos and Gavin McInnes and Stefan Molyneux, and don't platform because then it normalizes them. We shouldn't let people get used to Trump being normal. If I had to guess, I would say Ben back then was saying that he was taking the free speech absolutist position, which is that I don't know, maybe that doesn't directly contradict what he's saying here, because he's not saying that you shouldn't platform Nick Fuentes. He's saying that the problem was that Tucker invited him on and then essentially agreed with him about his anti-Jewish takes, quite frankly.
The Heritage Foundation then decided to robustly defend that performance. Those who criticize both Tucker and Heritage aren't canceling. They are quite properly drawing a moral line. So, for those who don't understand what's going on, let's begin with Nick Fuentes. Now, as I mentioned, last week, Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes. Fuentes is a 27-year-old man who's dubbed himself the leader of a movement called the groypers. Now, from Tucker Carlson's interview, you might have gathered that Fuentes has some borderline views on race, a peculiar obsession with what he calls organized Jewry, and a rather sad relationship with the female sex. But probably you came away thinking that, for the most part, Fuentes lives on the radical edge of normality. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living. But back to Nick Fuentes. To understand just what Tucker did here, we must actually examine what Nick Fuentes says on his
Apparently, there was a moment between Megyn Kelly and Ben Shapiro just recently.
for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what?
Because
like I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business? I mean, you comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and
do you care about? He's talking about your political movement, Megyn. How is she so dumb? Like, she's not dumb. She's a lawyer. You know, she got a law degree. I don't know how she's so aloof and stupid in so many of these clips that I see. And I don't think it's an act. Like, I think she's genuinely aloof on a lot of these things.
somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in that content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch.
No,
Candace's show.
I believe you. I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that
what I understand
friendship
Candace
should
to
not,
have
in
been
our
doing.
business, I think it's important. Listen,
Candace
friendship
and I
should
are
not
not friends.
trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
Okay, so I don't totally disagree, but I think the way of handling that.
You know, it's funny because this is kind of like there's echoes of him in 2016. A lot of people might be surprised to learn that Ben Shapiro's origin story was he was a never Trump Republican in 2016. He did not vote for Trump in 2016. He was very vocal. This is before he really blew up, but he was a Breitbart reporter at the time. He quit Breitbart in part because of the, you know, I mean, there was a thing that happened, but like he was this never Trump Republican. And then Trump got elected and his calculation changed. But, you know, it's kind of not surprising that he's the one that's like kind of leading the charge within the right wing movement right now to push back against the like lunatics and the anti-Semites.
Show and has said for almost a decade, because he was asked precisely 0 questions about any of what you're about to see by Tucker Carlson. Nick Fuentes says women want to be raped.
A lot of women want to be raped, and when I say raped, I mean like that sounds bad when I say it like that, but there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
Nick Fuentes says that his followers should...
Nick is so unfamiliar with an adult consensual sexual relationship. This is such a foreign concept to him that from the outside in, he sees a woman that might prefer something like rough sex in a consensual, safe setting. He equates that with literal rape. I mean, this guy is the definition of a fucking incel that has no idea what he's talking about.
Kill and die in his name. Nick Fuentes says that women are whores who shouldn't be in politics.
I will continue my crusade against women in politics. It's always like this, and it's so ironic. Women are like, I don't like, when you say, I like it, you have to affect the face. When you say to repeal the 19th Amendment, that offends me. That hurts my feelings. It's like, have you ever stopped and considered that maybe if you get offended, there's such a strong emotional reaction to political opinions you disagree with across the board? Maybe that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making political decisions. I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking whores. You have no problems, right? I'm attacking whores. I'm attacking sluts. Stupid, dirty bitches.
Nick Fuentes says that Jim Crow was actually...
What is Nick Fuentes? Does he have any sisters, bro? I'm just so curious about what's his like family situation like, you know? He was raised in LaGrange Park, Illinois, and attended Lyons Township High School, where he was described as having held mainstream conservative views. He began political activism in 2016 after graduating and starting an episodic live stream, America First, in 2017. He started like heckling Charlie Kirk, established the Groyper War, began AFPAC, America First Political Action Conference. It's nice Ben is going after his side, Baldy. boldly, you mean? Or Baldy. Are you calling me Baldy or are you saying it's bold? But it's only because it's personal for him and he's okay with bigotry against others. So it's hard to take him seriously. All the anti-black and trans stuff. No. 100%. 100%. You are correct to point out that obvious contradiction. Let me make myself clear if I didn't make myself clear before. I am not putting Ben Shapiro up on a pedestal. I'm not necessarily praising him. I am sympathetic to someone like him being concerned about someone like Nick Fuentes. If I put myself in his shoes, yeah, of course. If I started to see blatant anti-Semitism, Nazism being mainstreamed, I sympathize with him as a Jewish man, seeing that happening and then feeling some kind of way about it. But, ... that only highlights the insane contradiction of it all. It's personal for him. It's personal for his family. And he does not extend that kind of sympathy to other groups who have experienced a whole hell of a lot of bullying. I don't know what else to call it. Well, it's worse. It's like bullying and then actual codified discriminatory law. You just can't seem to extend that empathy or sympathy to various groups that have suffered as a result of the rise of Trump and how far right he has shifted the Republican Party culturally.
Black people.
It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares?
I didn't even get to, hold on. So he was born in 1998. This guy's 27. He has a twin sister, Melissa. Do we know anything about her? I just wonder how he gets along with his family. What the fuck?
To drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal. Oh no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up, drink out of the fucking water fountain. It's water, it's the same. You know, and, you know, even if it was bad, who cares? Who cares? It's better. It's better in general. We all agree it was better for them. It's better for us. Better in general.
Nick Fuentes says that white people are justified in being racist.
Reason that we talk about this, by the way, I know a lot of black people see this and they go, man, why are you always talking about black people, this and that? Because there just needs to be some shame here. Well, there's a few reasons. First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way.
I don't know if I can watch this, you know.
Nick Fuentes is a Hitler admirer and a Holocaust denier.
Buddy, it's Führer Friday. It is Friday. Shut up. It is Heil Friday. Heil Hitler.
Jesus Christ. This is very problematic. I'm just going to mute all the sections with Nick Fuentes. I think that's the move here. Gremlo skipped past all the Nick parts because he couldn't risk the amount of slurs he said and such. You'd have to skip to a third the way through it. He covers... Jesus. Okay.
And there's no doubt that Nick Fuentes has a lot of play these days. That's because the left, by moving into a politics of anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male identitarianism, created its bizarro mirror image, a white pseudo-Christian incel identitarian movement dedicated to destroying the institutions of this country and replacing Americanism with something.
He's not even saying incel is like a pejorative here. I mean, he's just like correctly identifying the movement for what it is.
Else. Nick Fuentes' philosophy.
It's as much of an incel movement as it is a white supremacist movement. They fucking hate women. Which, by the way, goes hand in hand with Nazism and fascism. All of those movements, every single fascist movement, have been deeply misogynistic, anti-women.
He's not fully formed. It's an incoherent stew of malignity.
Am I right?
But that's where Tucker Carlson enters the story. Now, since his exit from Fox News in 2023, when, of course, he was a very, very popular host, Tucker Carlson has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar.
True.
Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the U.S. government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. It's architecture, it's food, it's service than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological.
The average Russian spends half their income on food, just to be clear about what they're up against in Russia.
How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
So I guess
Not if you're a woman.
you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went for
That actually is kind of clever, right? But don't we, hold on, wait. Don't we have our own kind of, like there's a lot of places where you have shopping carts and there's like some kind of a perimeter that's established. And if you try to move the shopping cart out of the perimeter, it just engages the brakes and you can't move it or whatever.
from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult.
A survey from 2024 reported that 60.4% of Russians said they spend about half of their monthly income on food. A report by Romir Group in April 2025 found that Russians, on average, spent 34.6% of their income on food. It's a lot. What a stupid thing for Tucker Carlson to say, like, oh my God, it's so much cheaper over here. Like, bro, they're spending half of their paycheck on food, bro.
Difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by
It's such unbelievable, like, sophistry. It's so unbelievably silly.
a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't
And the interview with Vladimir Putin was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen in my life.
speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that, you know, a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general. It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people as well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, you know, as individuals who are quote unquote independent from anyone, that's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street,
Like, literally, what the fuck happened to Tucker Carlson in the last 10 to 15 years? He legitimately lost his fucking mind. And maybe he was always a bit bananas, but he has just gone off the fucking deep end, bro. Talking about waking up, because a demon was scratching them and then, claiming to have actual scratch marks from an actual literal demon. He said that shit. He said he was attacked not by a metaphorical demon. He said he was physically attacked by a literal demon that left scratch marks on him. He spoke about Trump in the private text that came out in the Dominion lawsuit.
You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now.
He described Donald Trump as a literal demon. That's what he said in private. He said, I think Donald Trump is demonic. I think he's an actual demon.
Random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left wing on economics, not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is a group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
It's a real scene. It's midnight at the Kremlin. Putin pulls Tucker Carlson aside to privately discuss Ukraine. Instead, Tucker starts quizzing him on whether a Nazi leader was possessed by demons. Putin seemed unable or unwilling to respond and goes back to talking about Ukraine. What is this story? Standing in the shadow of a statue of Peter the Great, Putin told Carlson in a hushed voice, he says, that he was worried that his invasion of Ukraine might escalate into a nuclear conflict. Putin himself has repeatedly raised that prospect as a threat. This is bullshit, by the way. He does that to freak out American right-wingers, like just fucking classic fucking crafty Russians. And then right-wingers fucking fall for it, and they're like, we can't support them. It's going to be a nuclear war. Yeah, this is like a decades-old thing, yeah. And complained that he hadn't spoken with President Biden since the war started. According to Carlson, Putin pitched what he said was his frustration and alleged, without evidence, that some members of the Biden administration with family roots in today's Ukraine were obstructing peace efforts. Carlson then indulged one of his own peculiar obsessions, quizzing Putin about the secret Soviet files on Rudolf Hess, Adolf Hitler's deputy who defected to Britain in 1941 and allegedly told interrogators that the Nazi leader had been possessed by demons. A practicing Christian with a degree in history, Carlson says demonic possession is real. I happen to know for a fact. Putin seemed unable or unwilling to respond. But he's just such a fucking psychopath. Just lunatic.
On behalf of Israel and Mossad, making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing.
Wild what is happening in Republican Party politics right now. It's crazy what's happening over there.
Nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson has stated that President Trump has undermined America First and MAGA by attacking Iran, giving in to neocon ghouls like Mark Levin, while also idiotically arguing that President Trump striking Iran's nuclear facilities would lead to World War III. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Tucker Carlson also said in his interview with Nick Fuentes that the people he hates most in the entire world, more than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Trans-Tifa, Marxists, murderers, are Christian Zionists, who represent an enormous chunk of the conservative base. According to Tucker Carlson, who admits that he first read the Bible all the way through just 2 years ago, Christians who support a Jewish state of Israel are heretics and blasphemers with a brain virus.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton? I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. And most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like, what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
Tucker Carlson has said that he despises American Jews who care about October 7th. We, in his words, don't care about America and also want to get his kids killed in a foreign war.
I've got 4 draft-age children. So if you're playing recklessly fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you, and I do. So if you're Nikki Haley, who's running for president, or Ben Shapiro, or half the people I see on television casually mentioning the possibility of nuclear war or sending Americans to fight in the Middle East, or in any way involving us in a war that has nothing to do with prosperity and peace at home, nothing, in other words, to do with us, Americans, then I have a right to call you out and be really offended because it's my family. They live here. It's not a joke to me. There's nothing abstract about it.
But most of all, Tucker Carlson acts as an ideological launderer for other people's evils. Tucker Carlson says many inflammatory things, always buying back just enough of it to appear as though he's not saying what he's clearly saying. He's a master of gaslighting. Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care, and then he provides them with a massive signal boost. He isn't merely talking to people in good faith, of course. He's promoting certain people and ideas and attacking others. So, for example, he'll ask a series of wildly obsequious questions to Nick Fuentes. He'll even let Nick Fuentes' support for Joseph Stalin slide.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was an admirer. But we don't need to go into that, I guess. Like,
well, that's, okay, let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
But he will grill Ted Cruz about the population.
Just let that slide. Yeah, you're going to grill Ted Cruz on Israel, which, okay, fair, I guess. But you're going to let that slide when Stalin was one of the most brutal, murderous dictators ever, perhaps the most brutal dictator ever. Or Mao, maybe Mao actually. Yeah, Mao put up fucking numbers, bro. Mao was 40 to fucking 70 million people. Stalin, though, not that far behind, 20 to 30 million people. Mao does get the top spot. I mean, Lenin was no slouch either, by the way. He killed millions of people too. But
of Iran. Tucker Carlson will have on Vladimir Putin's evil, anti-American mouthpiece, Alexander Dugin, and then praise him.
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political figure here in Russia. He is, once again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2022, his only daughter was murdered in Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that, once again, Alexander Dugin is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor to Vladimir Putin. He is a writer who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon, banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous. He's often described, again in the English language press, as far right. We'll let you assess, but we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States.
Tucker Carlson will have on a Hitler-friendly pseudo-historian to minimize the Holocaust and blame Winston Churchill for World War II, and he will call him America's best and most honest historian.
I thought Churchill.
So there was a chatter who said that the 20 to 30 million figure for Stalin includes sometimes Soviets that were killed during the Nazi invasion. So thank you for pointing that out, by the way. And if you take that out, the new estimate actually gets closer to like 10 to 15 million people. That's still quite a lot, just to be clear.
Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I don't really think, I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war
I know Holodomor was a famine.
Becoming what it did, becoming something.
Whether it was caused by ineptitude or intentionality or like intentional harm, to me, it doesn't matter that much.
Other than an invasion of Poland. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there.
And that is the pseudo-historian that Tucker Carlson has said is the best and most honest historian in America. Tucker Carlson will have on over and over a pro-Chinese propagandist who used global warming to promote global socialism, all in order to criticize Israel and hug China.
Israel has run American foreign policy in the Middle East for 30 years. That's how it works. This is actually...
That seems like kind of a big claim.
Actually the truth. If we drop our angst on big bad Russia, actually, we didn't have a chance to talk about it this time, maybe another time, big bad China, which is also not going to invade the United States, not going to threaten us, not going to go to war with us. They're trying to deal with aging, and they've got their declining population and many other things. Not that they're falling apart. It's a very impressive civilization, but they're not a threat to the United States, honestly, and Iran is not a threat.
Tucker Carlson, of course, brings on pro-Hamas voices episode after episode after episode. The instances are almost limitless. Tucker Carlson will host Andrew Tate, a pornographer and scam artist who mocks victims and preaches a cult of narcissism and cruelty. And of course, Tucker Carlson will glorify him and present him as a maligned truth teller rather than an emblem of moral rot. See, this is how Tucker Carlson's ideological laundering works. You bring your dirty, ugly ideologies to Tucker Carlson's rhetorical...
Bashir, I think, would be a strong candidate. I think he'd be a strong VP, but I don't think he's rizzed enough. He doesn't have enough rizz, I don't think.
Car wash. He mixes it with some of the vestigial respect Americans have for him from his Fox News days, and voila, hideous ideas suddenly become mainstream. And then, of course, Tucker denies he said anything controversial at all. He was just asking questions. He was just interviewing people. You don't want him to cancel people, do you?
Trump accuses foreign-owned meat packers of inflating U.S. beef prices and calls for investigation.
Of course, they're
worried, guys. They're fucking worried.
Is no First Amendment right to a Tucker Carlson sensual massage. But to listen to Tucker, you'd think there was, so long as you despise America, oppose President Trump's foreign policy, and bear a peculiar dislike of Jews. Tucker Carlson, you see, is a coward. And here is where his relationship with Nick Fuentes begins, with Nick Fuentes correctly pointing out that Tucker Carlson is a coward. You see, Tucker Carlson, a few weeks back, had on Candace Owens to treat her to his usual ideological laundering services. That's after years of Candace Owens saying things like this.
And it is the case that dinosaur bones, for whatever reason, are always just found by the paleontologist. Like, it's not like you and me walking outside. I'm like, hey, a dinosaur bone. And, or by somebody who's related to a paleontologist. It's very strange. And then, but it was just convenient for Israel that, JFK got shot. It was just convenient, you guys. Totally convenient. It was convenient for Israel, by the way, when the towers went down.
I just want to be clear. Anything happens to me, blame the Zionists. Like 1000% blame the Zionists. Like let that be my parting word.
I'm waking people up to the fact that pedophiles are in power. Yes. They are literally in power. And that is intentional because then they can be controlled while they are in power. And they are also exhibiting signs of a psychopathology that lets them know that they will do
Hell of a pot kettle moment right there.
Harm to the masses and feel nothing because they were themselves, many of them, when they were children. Yep. It's not a coincidence that Justin Trudeau is gay. Obama, gay. Zelensky, gay. Emmanuel Macron, gay and married to a trans man who molested him when he was a child.
Well, Candace Owens had recently hosted Nick Fuentes, and this led Tucker Carlson.
People are fucking insane. Like, Tucker and Candace are insane. They're crazy. Fuentes, I think that's all ideology. I think that's all ideological. Tucker, I think, has some kind of ideological system, but like, they're both insane. Like, Tucker and Candace Owens are fucking insane.
In an attempt to dissociate from Fuentes, to label him a weird little gay kid operating from a basement, and a Fed as well.
That's obvious to me. I've been around a long time. I know when I see it.
Yeah, and I will say I don't understand it. We were very kind to him. Like, I truly, like, we almost said, like, we felt maybe he was a bit lonely. We should invite him back for dinner. I mean, that's how good of an experience I had.
Clearly it's
and then it was a 180. So it's either A, it's being driven from like a little boy insecurity, and he just was so worried that he like just went on the attack because he doesn't know how to have normal relations after being banned everywhere.
Well, I think that
could be one element.
The angry gay kid thing going on. Yeah.
Well, Nick Fuentes did not take kindly to this. After all, here was Tucker Carlson, a man Nick Fuentes correctly sees as a fellow traveler, dismissing him, all the while refusing to say the sorts of things for which Fuentes takes slings and arrows. And so Fuentes unleashed on him as a fraud and also as an expert on gaslighting.
Tucker is like the GOAT of gaslighting. But unironically, he goes up at the memorial and said, Charlie Kirk told the truth. You know who else told the truth? Jesus. And you know what happened? He got killed by Jews. And people said, so are you saying that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk in the way that they killed Jesus for telling the truth because they hate the truth? And Tucker said, I never said that. You're crazy. I never said that. Everyone eats hummus. What do you mean? Everyone runs Jerusalem. But I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Tucker Carlson.
Wait, I can't watch these. What am I doing?
100% correct. Tucker is a coward, and Tucker's audience, much of which he shares with Nick Fuentes, knows it. And so Tucker hit upon a final stratagem. He let Nick Fuentes cuck him. He brought Nick Fuentes on to legitimate his ideology. He signal boosted Fuentes, glossed him, shined him, presented him to the world, all in order to protect his own reputation with his online base. A base he is.
Senate Republicans have rejected the offer by Democrats to reopen the government in exchange for 1-year extension of ACA subsidies.
Competing over with Nick Fuentes. Now, of course, Tucker has a right to do all of this for the 100th time, but there's no question that Tucker has become the most virulent super spreader of vile ideas in America. And the rest of us who oppose those vile ideas have every right to call him that. There's one other element here that's even darker if possible. Tucker Carlson preys on the friendship he proclaims with others, and then he knifes them directly between the shoulder blades when convenient for him. Tucker Carlson is, in short, a terrible friend. Tucker Carlson was supposedly Charlie Kirk's friend. Charlie believed that Nick Fuentes was vermin. That's a direct quote. He believed that because Nick Fuentes dedicated his life to destroying Charlie Kirk and TPUSA from the inside. In fact, here's Nick Fuentes describing Charlie Kirk the month before Charlie was murdered.
Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event, one more question and answer, one more ask me anything, without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this. This guy goes around from campus to campus in the most artificial and phony and fake way.
And here is Nick Fuentes describing how he destroyed TPUSA from the inside.
Whether he chooses to confront me or not, whether he has dignity and honor or not, it's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I fucked it. I took your organization. I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and
You fucked a baby?
I fucked it. And I've been fucking it. And that's why it's filled with groypers.
What the fuck? I don't know if he meant to do that with his analogy.
That's why your whole crew, that's why the people around you, that's why your chapter presidents, that's why your attendees, they're all groypers.
And here's Nick Fuentes calling Charlie Kirk unpatriotic and talking about how he's a idiot and saying all firepower should be focused on Charlie Kirk.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being. A moral struggle that's happening on the higher dimension, right? Which is Christ versus the devil. Who does Charlie Kirk serve? You know, is he really a Christian? Is he really Christ-like when he supports foreign wars and Israel and all this? Look at the people he's taking money from. You know, so the guy's a fake Christian. The guy's not a patriot. He hates our country. He's un-American. Let's focus all our firepower on Charlie Kirk. Why are we doing this? It's because Charlie Kirk is a fake patriot.
Very poor choice of words.
A fake Christian, and he hates his people. He's anti-white. This is our angle.
Nick Fuentes despised Charlie Kirk. And for good reason, because Charlie Kirk actually opposed Nick's evil program. Here's what Charlie Kirk had to say about Nick Fuentes' agenda.
But if you go back to the original founding fathers, they intended this to be a European nation for white men of good stock and character.
So, can you show me, let me answer the question. Can you show me where in the United States Constitution it says that?
It wasn't in the Constitution.
It wasn't in the Constitution because they didn't believe it.
The founding...
What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean? What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean?
Why is that relevant?
Because it was on every founding document and presidential seal from our founding, which means out of many, one. You, sir, and your ideology is not conservative. It is right-wing, identitarian. It has no place in the conservative movement, my friend. Get out of line. Get out of line. I don't platform trolls, and I don't platform and I don't discuss people or I don't debate with people that are not good faith actors. And
you debate Maoists and people who champion.
They can keep on yelling at how successful we are and our big events and well over 1,000 employees, but there's a lot of jealousy out there. We build, they complain. We succeed, we win. They blame the Jews.
After Charlie's death, TPUSA made Tucker Carlson one of its chief faces. Tucker, of course, spoke at Charlie's memorial, where he implied that hummus-eating nefarious Jews killed Charlie, with no mention of the ideology of the actual alleged murderer, who was, of course, a trans activist gay furry. Tucker Carlson, in fact, has spent more time talking about Jews and Israel since Charlie's death than about the Trans-Tifa ideology that motivated Charlie Kirk's killer. By a long shot, it's not close, which is not a surprise, since he seems to spend very little time these days attacking anyone on the left. Well, now Tucker Carlson has seen fit to launder Nick Fuentes, the person who hated Charlie most and who wished him destruction. That's not an act of friendship, it's an act of sick evil. And then, of course, there's Tucker Carlson's relationship with the vice president. Certainly, Vice President Vance has been quite generous with Tucker Carlson. That loyalty was not reciprocated last week, to say the least. Here, for example, is what Nick Fuentes has said about J.D. Vance's wife, Usha.
Oh, boy. I might have to skip here.
Andrew Tate and Bronze Age pervert and all these people, for years, all they talk about is going to the gym, being a vitalist, fighting the Matrix, India smells bad, all this kind of shit. And now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip that.
Question about any of this. He just brought him on to launder his ugly ideas and make him more popular. That doesn't seem quite like the act of a friend. Which, finally, brings us to the Heritage Foundation. Now, I have a long and admiring relationship with the Heritage Foundation. One of the very first outlets to pick up my syndicated column when I was 17 years old, 24 years ago, was townhall.com, then a property of the Heritage Foundation. I know most of the leadership very well, and I have for decades. I know Kevin Roberts, and I like him, and I'm grateful for his contributions to the conservative movement. If you're a regular watcher of this show, you can check the interview I did with Kevin on the release of his book just last December. Which is why what Kevin Roberts did last week is tragic and awful. He put out a statement that Heritage Foundation didn't just stand by Tucker Carlson. Kevin instead said openly and repeatedly that Tucker Carlson can do nothing, ever, that will sever his relationship with the conservative movement. He said that after and in defense of Tucker's glossing of Hitler defender Nick Fuentes. And he added that only members of the globalist class, direct quote, a venomous coalition, direct quote, subject to the dictates of someone else's agenda, direct quote, oppose Heritage's ongoing relationship with Tucker Carlson, which means that according to Kevin Roberts, apparently, anyone opposing the ongoing mainstreaming of Tucker Carlson is acting on behalf of a foreign power. Kevin's statement is a betrayal of the Heritage Foundation's history and principles, which is presumably why both Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes loved it. And that's a tragedy, because America needs a robust conservative organization based on principle and ideas, not personal loyalty to bad actors like Tucker Carlson. We need strong leaders in the conservative movement willing to speak out against the moral rot that threatens our future. I hope Kevin Roberts and Heritage show us that they can still be those leaders. But if not, we'll have to look elsewhere. So, why is all of this happening? Because, like the Democratic Party, the Republican Party is being eaten by its radicals. Many in the political class are too cowardly.
The difference is it's true for them and it's not true for us. We have our radicals that are like nipping at our heels, but I think we need to set aside, like, I don't think somebody with progressive politics, I'm not going to call them radical. When we talk about radicals, I'm thinking about like tankies, Marxists, actual socialists. Like DSA membership countrywide is like 80,000 people right now. They peaked in, I think, 2020 or 2021. They peaked at 95,000 and then started dropping off. They dropped down to like 80,000. I suspect they'll probably get a boost because of Mamdani, and we'll see what those numbers look like, but they're pretty small group. Gallup polls showed that 66% of Democrats have a positive view of socialism. We've talked about this a bunch this week. This is like the third time this has come up, but it's a pretty easy way to explain that. And that is the vast majority of those people, when they hear socialism, they're thinking about like subsidized healthcare for everybody, more social spending programs, basically, like a bigger welfare state. They're not talking about like, let's seize the means of production. We looked up how many Americans actually know what socialism means. I can't give you a percentage of like how many of those 60% in the Democratic Party could actually tell you what socialism means. I don't know what those numbers look like. But when we looked up how many people in what Americans think the word socialism means, you can find a Gallup poll from a few years ago. And the correct answer, which was a bit imprecise, because the government controls the means of production. I can't remember exactly how they said it. It was like only 17% of Americans correctly identified what the definition is, and that everybody else had different definitions. There was, I think, like 6% of the country thought socialism means like socializing, like being social. Like the percentage of Americans in this country that are like actual Marxists, I believe, is less than like 2 or 3%. Today I learned I do not have the correct definition of socialism. The fact that Hutch can argue so well in spite of his baldness, giving negative speech. Wait, what the fuck?
To stand up. Apparently, they're willing to play footsie with groypers and hug Tucker Carlson out of fear of somehow losing support. They've been bamboozled by the lies of the X algorithm and the TikTok metrics. The left followed its radicals to electoral hell. Apparently, many on the right wish to do the same.
Look, it sucks to lose elections, but hell? Electoral hell? You have a 3-seat majority in the Senate and a 4-seat majority in the House? And Kamala lost by like roughly like, what was it? 1.5% in the popular vote and roughly 2 to 3% in the battleground states. That's not hell, bro. The night that you guys had on Tuesday, that was hell. And I think the night they're going to have in 2026, that's going to be hell. And we avoided hell specifically because we were doing such a good job of not picking lunatics to be our candidates. We were able to avoid what has plagued the Republican Party in the era of Trump. We were able to limit our losses in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Like, it shouldn't have been possible for us to pick up a Senate seat in 2022. That should not have happened. Let's just be clear. Inflation was at like its peak in 2022. In conventional times against a conventional Republican Party, we should have lost. We should have gotten absolutely blown the fuck out in 2022. And we barely lost the House, and we picked up a Senate seat. That happened because our primary voters have done a pretty good job of picking like strong candidates. Meanwhile, they're over there with like Blake Masters and Carrie Lake and Herschel Walker. Like we We don't have that problem at that level that they're working with. And I hope that stays the case. Okay. The Plattner situation is, I need him to just crash and burn. Okay.
Forget the morality then for just a moment. Let's be pragmatic. Here is the thing. Americans hate Nick Fuentes' philosophy. They think it's trash. Republicans, by the polling, think it's trash. Independents think it's trash. Democrats think it's trash. And here's the other thing. Americans hate Tucker Carlson's laundered anti-Americanism. Republicans think it's trash. Independents think it's trash. Democrats think it's trash. Americans are not pro-segregation, anti-woman, pro-child marriage, anti-black, anti-Jew, anti-Indian, anti-Latino, anti-Constitution, pro-Hitler nutjobs like Nick Fuentes. And Americans are not pro-Putin, pro-Iran, pro-China, pro-Venezuela, pro-Hamas, pro-Fuentes, pro-Tate idiots like Tucker Carlson.
This might be one of the only Ben Shapiro videos that I've ever watched where I agree with about 95% of what he's saying. Literally the only disagreements that I've had throughout this entire video has been about his characterization of what's happening on the left. They have deluded themselves into thinking that the most radical college student that was on any of those campus protests that happened a couple years ago, they have deluded themselves into thinking that's like the median Democratic voter. When in reality, the median Democratic voter is like a 50-year-old black guy named Daryl in Georgia, who's, not at all radical. Or like Susan, like a 42-year-old, like divorcee living in the outskirts of Dallas or something. But they've just been lying to themselves and their audiences for years. It's not that the Democratic Party doesn't have problems. It's not that the left wing in this country don't have problems. I've been speaking to those problems nonstop for like 4 months. People give me shit for doing that. I'm talking about it so much, but I would rather have our problems than their problems right now. The Plattner stuff I think is bad, but that is just so much less bad than the fact that Ben Shapiro felt so much pressure. The fact that Nick Fuentes has become so influential in conservative politics that Ben Shapiro had to make a 41-minute video about it. That tells you something about where they're at right now. And I think it is so much worse than where we're at. I would so much rather be Democrats right now moving forward. Switch, yeah, I'd love to be, give me your margins in 2024 if we could go back. I would prefer to have won. But right now, I think Democrats have a much better path ahead of us than Republicans do, who are barreling towards the edge of a cliff here, guys. Donald Trump is going to leave office one way or another by January 20th, 2029. The Republican Party needs to figure out how to, whoever the candidate is going to be in 2028, and I don't think it's going to be Trump, they have to find a way to run a campaign with Donald Trump still as the leader of the party, who is not going to abide giving up the spotlight. Like, this is not a man who is looking to share power with anyone or share influence. His whole identity at this point, this narcissistic, fragile, fat idiot, according to his health, how much did it say he weighed again on his, like he weighs like 220 pounds? He's going to be a 220 pound weight, according to his physical, that the next Republican nominee is going to have to carry in a rucksack in 2028, because Donald Trump is not going to go away quietly. He's just going to become more and more unhinged. They're just so fucked right now until something really drastic changes. They are so fucked right now. Like, I don't know what they need, but they need something to change. Like, look at these numbers. That is a bad trajectory, you guys. I mean, look at this. You got, like, look at this. Hold on. This just popped up on my feed. I didn't even have to seek it out. It just landed on my feed. Okay. This is Donald Trump saying affordability is a con by the Democrats.
So I just heard this yesterday that Walmart said that the Thanksgiving was 25% more expensive under Biden. That's a big, to me, that's a big number, because Walmart's respected. I mean, Walmart is Walmart, and they're giving you prices. So that would mean that the whole series of pricing and costs, the groceries and everything else, it was a con job. It was a con job. Affordability, they call it, was a con job by the Democrats.
Cut, import to Adobe, add some music, add some text, Thanks for the campaign ad. We're going to see that in I promise you, we're going to see that in campaign ads all over the country in 2026. You have a dangerous combination in Donald Trump, which is profound ignorance and supreme confidence. He seems totally ignorant to what his tariff policies have done to prices all over the country. He seems to just not know. He seems to not know who actually pays the tariffs. Like, I think he genuinely doesn't understand who pays the tariffs. And I don't know if anyone's ever explained it to him. I mean, say what you will about Biden's Bidenomics package, but he didn't lie like this. He didn't say that prices weren't, he didn't say that prices were coming down. He said that we're doing better than other countries. In any case, you got this violent, sundowning idiot who is just heading in the wrong direction. That's not a good trajectory. And it's starting to become more pronounced. Like, oh boy, they're really starting to fall off a cliff here. Clearly, you guys, I have to assume this is because of the shutdown, you guys. Am I wrong about this? It's got to be. Oh, it took such a sharp turn down. I have to assume a lot of that is because of the shutdown. CEOs and business leaders definitely have told him. I don't know. I've seen enough clips of Donald Trump. I really don't think he understands that Americans pay tariffs, but
they hate this.
And then meanwhile, as they're all scrambling to figure out, like, what are we going to do post-Trump? Like, who has a plan here? Peter Thiel has a plan, apparently. And it's JD Vance, but I have to assume Peter Thiel feels and Vance. I have to assume that both of them feel incredibly nervous right now. And they're dealing with an insurgent in Nick Fuentes, who has such a strong following that the president of the Heritage Foundation felt it necessary to essentially defend. And then he immediately, this Heritage Foundation guy, immediately walks it back and starts going into damage control, because now within the staff of Heritage Foundation, it's like fucking chaos. This is what the reporting says. It's a shit show inside one of the most prestigious, one of the most influential right-wing organizations of the last 30 years. The Heritage Foundation has been a tremendously beneficial organization for Republicans for the last 30 years. And now there's a serious schism. Look into the reporting, look it up. It's like a civil war between the pro-Tucker, pro-Fuentes camp and the, oh my God, what the fuck is going on with these Nazis camp. Democrats, we have problems, we have issues. I don't love everybody that claims to be under the Democratic Party umbrella, but I would so much rather be us right now.
Vile garbage. If Republicans decide to cower before the likes of neo-Nazis and their propagandizers, they deserve to lose. And they will lose. Neo-Nazis and their propagandizers are not Republicans. They are not America First. They are not MAGA. They sure as hell aren't conservative. These people aren't to my right. They are not attached in any way to the fundamental principles of conservatism. And these people have already declared themselves to be my enemies. I'd be a fool not to take them seriously. If they get their way, they will hollow out the Republican Party, lead it to electoral catastrophe, and empty it and the country of any semblance of decency in the process. My answer is no. No to the groypers. No to their publicists like Tucker Carlson. No to those who champion them. No to demoralization. No to bigotry and anti-meritocratic horse shit. No to anti-Americanism. No. This is our country. This is our party. And this is our conservative movement. And I will not stand by while it is handed over to those who betray the most fundamental principles I have spent my entire life defending and advocating. That is a path to defeat and a path to moral oblivion. I reject it, because if we lose the right, we will lose to the left. And either way, we'll lose the country. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show.
Man, I think the problem that they're facing is definitely understated. I don't think people broadly fully appreciate what a dire situation the conservative movement is in right now. You don't need Nick Fuentes to be overwhelmingly popular for him to cause a lot of disruption. If even just 10% or 15% of conservative voters find Nick Fuentes appealing, that number alone could have consequences that are so profound for the conservative movement in this country.